Welcome to the Tiny Box Dialogues. This series was created to share the knowledge of our experts using real examples from real people with real stories. Welcome back to the Tiny Box Dialogues. Now, today the plan was to have 4 women join us, but of course, times being what they are, a couple of them are sick and unable to attend. But don't worry, we've still got fabulous women to talk to today. So today we're speaking to women from all walks of life and experience. With the International Women's Week this month, it's a topic that's taken on a life of its own in my community. It's a topic close to my heart and is a core component of the work I do to empower women and give them visibility within my network. Now, there's 7.7 billion people on Earth today. More than half are women, yet heads of state, government, corporations, and almost any power position, it's white men. And I was seeking a culmination of immediately actionable advice from different cultural backgrounds, professional backgrounds, and experiences that I could share today. So today we have joining us Maria Jose Pereira Marquez, someone who comes from corporate life, but is a co-founder of LD7, and Laura Kaika, who is a startup queen working with Makira's Fanbase and more. So having said that, let's kick it off with stories of the worst thing you had to overcome in your career. Maria Jose Pereira Marquez is co-founder of LD7, has over 20 years in multinational companies of the financial services sector, including captives, in roles accelerating change and commercializing new ventures. But I'm still thrilled that you explore unmet needs and enable them by digitization. I have my own experience with finance, like stepping back in time when I joined a particular finance company, and it was like a checkbox activity. You're a woman of color, you're from a different country. But whilst this is a problem in multiple industries, lack of gender diversity is particularly prevalent in finance. What has been your experience? Please introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your backstory.
So thank you very much, Raj. Indeed, so I've spent most of my professional lifetime in financial services, although looking still in different industries as well. And what I found quite interesting is that finance and also financial intelligence is not being taught at all at school. So when you're looking at the school subjects, there is no particular subject called finance, or at least financial intelligence. And this is in so far very, very difficult, as then people are not, then when they're getting out of school, they simply don't know how to invest their money in. It might not be very, very, let's say, very, very important at the beginning of a career, but it's getting important. It's getting important to later in life, and especially women, if they're then also pushed into their typical role models, maybe also cut off the, let's say, family finances. That's getting then even worse if they are then stepping out of a relationship and then try to find out their own destiny in finance, right? So that's how my main thing would be, why not integrate financial intelligence, or at least finance subjects, into the school curriculum?
Yeah, building wealth is definitely a big gap that we see. I mean, there is this one side that everyone focuses on of equal pay, and of course, it's still stunning that we still have to question that. But there's the other side of it is building wealth and that wealth knowledge. So I love that you highlighted that. Now, Laura, I'd love to introduce you, considering that we're talking about digital transformation. Your goal is connecting people to spur their professional development, whether that is running a workshop, moderating a panel because you're great on stage, or coaching internal talent. What's your experience been, and from the startup perspective?
So being in the startup world, for like working really in the startup world for the last 4 or 5 years, and being around a lot of startups, I really like the energy that's out there. There's a lot of change. It's easy to go in, to meet people, to be open to technology, to diversity. But then again, of course, it sometimes seems easier to adapt a new technology, and because everybody's young-minded and the structures are really agile. But then again, there as well, some problems may occur being young founders, or even being starting out, being super flexible, and then you're growing, and with growth always change comes up, and then really adapting and ongoing, and communication and being transparent is topics I experienced as well. a challenge to startups.
You said something very interesting earlier when we spoke about the good thing is that diversity is part of the foundation of a startup because you're already set up for it. Do you want to just expand on that a little? What does that mean?
Sure. So as I experienced, for example, that the first startup I really worked with, they started already setting up the company very agile. Everything was digital. Everything was from the beginning in English. And that helps you, of course, if you already have like this as a start to then add on. It's easier to recruit worldwide. It's easier to integrate a lot of things, may it be technology, may it be people. And I really, really love that. So I think that's a huge success story, because you don't have just the same topics than perhaps a company that worked with us for the last 30 years is coming up to. Yeah.
That's totally fair. I think that's a right assessment. Now, one of the reasons that I was talking about statistics previously was in Invisible Women by Carolyn Criada Perez, another Perez, makes a clear distinction between women and men because women define themselves solely by their relationships to men. This is a statement from the book. Wives, daughters, sisters, mothers, like as though we're some subtype of men, and rather than autonomous human beings with our own goals, desires, and specific needs. Clearly, we're all women. We know we have our own goals, desires, and specific needs. The thing I would challenge you with is, do you feel that we're still defined that way? What has that changed for women? Do we have a title other than one that's linked to being in a role with, let's say, a man or our children? Maria Jose, you can go if you like.
I mean, I think it depends on how we have been raised and how we have been educated, right? So if we are being educated equally in terms of access to technology, access to education, access also to jobs, then it's easier for us to find the right role than beside being a wife, being a daughter. And that's something, if I may share also a personal story on this is the way how I was raised, right? So I was raised by parents making almost an equal balance, even though having different roles, but making an equal balance on their role within the family. And I was particularly taught that as soon as and as long as I'm willing to spend time and efforts, I can almost reach everything. And the second paradigm I was told was that that access to education is one of the most important things for everyone, and in particular also for women and for girls. So, and interesting enough was that I was almost 30 to detect that this is not normal for every girl and woman outside there, and I got quite puzzled when I experienced that a couple of women acting really, really different, especially in compared to me, and of course where I didn't understand really their behavior. And then I found out this is simply because they grew up in a totally different role model at home. So it needs to start at home in particular, so that girls are really having the right access and of course having opportunities which are equal.
I mean, I come from an Indian background, and that's totally not the way that I was raised. So I fully can appreciate that. Laura, were you raised in a home where you had equal roles there, or you were taught that you could achieve anything you like?
I don't think I had the same experience as Maria Jose had, but actually at home I had it like really. I think grew up really. In like my parents had equal roles, my mom was working, but if I look as well at the work and I think it's a lot about the environment. So I think it is possible and it's out there that the woman can have every role and can be every role and can study everything, and it just needs an environment where this is embraced to start with, and then it doesn't matter. So everybody can do every job, and it's not like, okay, women are only, I don't know, in marketing or something. So they can be as well their IT software lead. So I think this is changing a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Laura. That's great. And I think that that brings us to the next piece of it's fine to be equal at home, but what about work? And we know the famous example of seatbelts, right? They were designed for men because only men were considered when driving, not so women died because it wasn't considered that women would ever drive a car. I think it was from the 1050 crash test dummies were based around the 50th percentile male, which is 1.77 meters tall, way taller than me, and 76 kilos, way heavier than me. So with the muscle mass, proportions, male spinal column differing so much from a woman, that meant that we were dying in these car accidents, and 17% more likely to die is the statistic that I found. And it's all to do with how the car is designed. So this comes back to Maria Jose, what you're saying is that if we had women in that setup who are designing the technology and the consumer pieces, right, wouldn't that have an impact on how women are able to survive? So what has changed in technology? Do you feel that there's more women present in the technology world that are making that impact?
So first of all, let me make it a personal statement. Even though I'm having the height of 1.77 centimeters, I'm fortunately not that heavy. But anyway, I would have definitely also the same problems than every other woman. I think it's again going back to school. If you're still looking at school curriculums, it's still very much role model specific. Boys are more taught to make let's say the technical part, and girls are more taught to make the social part. And that's something which needs to change. And of course, at home, those girls who want to code, those girls who want to become an engineer, or even a firewoman, then in this regard, needs to have the embracement at home that they are good at what they want to do. And that's something which needs to take place already in this very safe environment. Of course, assuming that at home you have a safe environment, because in school it's too late. Definitely in adulthood it's already too late, and especially when girls are then going to university and study something which has been then somehow attached to their role model. And if you look at history, there are a couple of very, very interesting women which have made an impact in technology. Just Ada Lovelace, even though it was then detected after her death, she was actually the first programmer. It was not a man, right? So, and there are a couple of, at least Alan Turing based his way to design the first computer on her way to do programming. And there are a couple of other examples which turn to be out that women were the initiator of the technology we are now relying on most of the activities we do, right?
I love it. I think that's exactly the right kind of example that we should have. I'm going to throw a stat out there, and then Laura, I'm going to come to you, is we often see also the women are neglected in medical research, which is interesting considering how we've propelled medical research forward with the coronavirus pandemic. Now, I was looking at stats for this, and men aren't going to like the statistic of erectile dysfunction, but I'm going to say it anyway. So less than 2.5% of publicly funded research is dedicated solely to reproductive health, despite the fact that 1 in 3 women in the UK alone will suffer from reproductive or gynecological health issues. That's 5 times more research that goes into erectile dysfunction, which affects only 19% of men, than premenstrual syndrome, which affects 90% of women. These statistics are so crazy, but what I've noticed recently, like going to my St. Gallen reunion, is that there's a lot more women that are pioneering medical research apps or medical research technology. And one guy who was a co-founder with one of the women there said, what's your interest in this? And he goes, well, I come from a mother. Why wouldn't I want people to have kids? I come from a woman. It was a very interesting way to position it. Of course, it's interesting to me because it affects me too, right? So this was a really interesting perspective. But I think, Laura, you have mentioned that you've started to see a lot more diversity and a lot more women in the startup scene. Is that true, or do you have any thoughts on that?
So what I see is still sometimes I have the feeling there are so much more founders out there than female founders. Don't get me wrong, don't use the term, but like founders that are men versus founders that are women. but the women I met in working in startups actually are very great, and I think a lot of them as well are thinking about doing their own stuff. We had for being a software tech startup, we had actually equal in like nearly 50% women and men working there, what was very, very nice. I know that's not everywhere like this. I know that depends a little bit on the subject as well, but I think it may be a good environment, or perhaps it's easier to integrate, as I was saying, a little bit more diverse, because after feeling people are just a little bit more open and don't want to get offensive. Just my experience, I had a really great team, and there had a lot of different backgrounds, different countries, different whatever. So, and that made it as well easier to go on, and even easier to add. So if somebody from a totally different company came in, people could rely as well, being new to the city, being new to the team, and having different cultures, and try to really embrace all of that.
I love that you said subject, because I remember a conversation that you and I had, because you're decidedly millennial compared to my Generation X, and you tried to teach me about TikTok. So let's like have a little fun with that, because for me, I think of LinkedIn and it's very professional, it should be educational, and what am I sharing and is it relevant? But TikTok's not for that, right? So I'd love for you to share with the audience what you were trying to teach me about the new way of influence, I guess is the right term.
Yeah, so I like it. We're doing this quite a lot, like doing the mentoring both sides. So so as the last year, I got a lot of knowledge in all the social media stuff. One really huge platform is TikTok coming out. I love the platform because it has a lot of possibilities actually for World Wide Web, and perhaps we all know LinkedIn, and there you have your profile, and it's more about putting value out, putting education out there, versus the content of TikTok mainly is actually following trends. Trend may be a song, maybe a dance, maybe something, whatever. It's more about being funny. It's more of getting out there, trying stuff, not be too serious. What I love actually that TikTok is doing better than a lot of other social media platforms out there at the moment is that you can get a totally different reach. So you may be, socially speaking, nobody, like no followers, being wherever you are. It's just digital. You start a profile, you just go with some trends, and you can go viral on something super, super funny or even super sad, but you have the chance. Everybody has the chance. While other platforms like Instagram, for example, they have a different algorithm. So you get bigger and bigger. You need this natural grow, and you need to put content in, and maybe you buy your followers or you have your followers. It takes a lot of time, and perhaps everybody has different circumstance. So it's, for some, it's easier to get there. So you get perhaps a brand looking after you, you got pushed and so on. But TikTok gives you the possibility to really have a really fast social appearance. And actually they're sponsoring as well, like not sponsoring, but they're helping as well young talents. So I think there is a really huge possibility for a variety of diversity and so on to just go there and get out there and put your message on. And you still could be a person, have a message, but normally you starting getting huge, getting clicks is more about being funny, and then you can just go from there. Somebody will know you, and then you can be the person, but whatever, like gender, whatever, so on, different, just be out there.
I love that you say that, because that might be why I'm not successful there, because you have to be funny. I mean, come on, why you make it so tough for us? No, I love that synopsis, and thank you so much, because I think, Maria Jose, that really speaks to what you and I were talking about how we need to learn about apps as a rule. Like, I downloaded TikTok because somebody mentioned it to me, and then I went on it, and it just made apps. Like, I'm like, what's the purpose of this? Why are these people doing this dance? But that's a great explanation. It's to have fun, but also to get known. And then people go off that platform to see where you're operating elsewhere. Now, Maria Jose, why do you feel that it's, we need to train on apps as a fundamental rule? Because I think a lot of women might find that interesting. It's not something that's usually on the checklist for diversity, right?
It's definitely not. And what I found quite interesting, Laura, what you just shared with us, is that basically where we women are very good at is showing emotion. Being funny means also to show an emotion. And the whole corporate, and especially the whole corporate world, and sometimes also the whole business world, is about being serious. So just convey your story upon facts, and that's it. But that's not the real world, right? So this is also sometimes funny to observe that people are saying that, okay, I'm in a professional world, I'm in a totally different person in my private or personal life. That's not true, in my opinion. And what we should do also as women is to just make our emotions play into our professional life, as long as we are not really, as we are not offensive, as long as we are somehow adding something which is very, very helpful. And back to the apps there, I mean, it's we are in a technological world, and my personal opinion on using technology is that it should make our life easier, not really harder. So just by reflecting on the working environment, this does mean that use technology to work smarter, not harder. Use technology to work less, not more, and just have freedom to let your thoughts play, and that's it. So technology is for me there to substitute the work we don't like to do, to give us humans freedom to let us do things where we are good at, emotionally loaded decisions. That's a little bit my opinion on this.
That's a great opinion, and that was very succinctly put forward. I love that idea. Of course, technology is supposed to enable us to do our work properly, but I don't think it's always taken that way. So I love that. I know that a question that's come up is that, especially with the audience, is, what about men in this situation? And it's like, I think that that's the interesting thing, is that it's not about excluding men, it's about empowering women. And I think we need to make that very clear. I want to give another example is, I've worked in corporate offices, and I've always had a heater under my desk or a blanket at my desk. And men have always thought, oh, you're such a wuss, you don't, why do you need a heater? What sense does that make? What they don't realize is that the metabolic resting rates are lower than men's, which means it's always 5 degrees too cool in the offices for women. And men don't know that, right? So they think, oh, why are you always so cold? It's because our heart rates are slower. But what I wanted to say about that is that this is something that I think has enabled us in the last couple of years to see that working from home is not bad. We've talked about this many times in many of the dialogues, but it also enables us this opportunity to then change other things. Now, what would you like to see changing for women in the future? I'll start off with you, Maria Jose. You talked about equal opportunity. What does that mean to you, and where do you see that we need equal opportunity for women?
So first of all, equal opportunities means, again, access to education. Let women really run their own career path, enable environments where women can definitely be a mother as well. So that's something which is quite important as well. Not just let mothers being at the home office just to pursue their childcare. By the way, this is not really possible in my opinion, but anyway, that's another discussion. And other than that, let women also have their own career path and pace as well. So if a career path is being done in, let's say, 10 years for a man, that does not mean that for a woman it's the same, right? So just to have also all the family affairs being treated as well. So that's one point. And the other point is that leadership styles can differ between men and women, and this is also good. So my personal leadership style is about not really telling people what they need to do, but derive out of a mutual and adult conversation what it needs to be done. And then according to the role of someone who is dependent from me because I'm his or her boss, just derive what is best to do in this particular situation. And the reason why I found it out is because I got a lot of opportunities to lead teams either purely academic team or even very much operational teams. And by leading operational teams, I found out that I really don't like to tell people what they need to do. I want to enable people that they found out by themselves, by me coaching them and facilitating them situations so that they can then find out what's the best thing for the project, the rest of the team, or even an entire department.
I love that, because I mean, that actually segues perfectly into what Laura was discussing earlier, that it's taking control of that, your own situation, and really pushing for the changes you want to see. And Laura, you talked about, you know, how you should also empower yourself to find the right organization for you that's gonna fulfill what you want to do and treat you with equality. Is that something that you believe in?
Totally, yeah. So one thing that just popped up as well, just going back, and because Maria, you were saying about the education starting earlier, I think we all have a bias to that, and I would like to see more girls getting a robot for Christmas, and then don't get the pink robot, don't get like just starting there. I think there's a lot of education back to it. I didn't have it like I was playing with puppets, and perhaps I was as well missing a little bit a role model, like saying, having a mentor like a woman in tech. I could like see that this is a path. So perhaps we had it already, like school is teaching you a lot. Perhaps you need to learn some other stuff as well that helps you later on in a career, but we can just start earlier to show off the variety of possibilities you have. Because actually, I think you don't know, you know that like to become a doctor, you need to study medicine, but there's a lot of other stuff out there. So starting at school and in education, just showing the variety, and then perhaps mentoring could be a cool thing, even for younger women, to just get to see and acknowledge and ask questions and help to find your own personal way, and then find your own environment that where you work best, whatever somebody thinks is the best for you, or everybody is just different in this way. So I personally like it that you get brave enough to say as well no, and say yes to what is your environment. You can work best and be the most productive, and not putting you into a box, and that's the way you should be, and that's the way you should work, and that's the way you should be, have the highest performance. Yes.
I think that actually speaks to your final takeaway, doesn't it? So why don't you go ahead and give the final message that you would like to share about the staying in the system?
Yeah, so we were thinking about like what is the final takeaway. So just looking at my last 2 years, I think for me what I learned is like, you can just get up and leave, like taking leaders, but if there's an environment you don't feel comfortable, or an environment that's not fitting to you, you can change it. You have the choice to leave, you have the choice to change, go to a different company, don't work in a company anymore, like leave that system, the structure, or as well leave the relationship, friends, and just change it as you want it to be, so that it's helping you to feel safe and become the best version, I think, private and in career life. So yeah, if you see it's not your system, not your box, just you have the choice to find your fitting.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Laura. And Marie-José, I want to give you an opportunity for your final takeaway for women today.
Thank you, Raj. Laura, I like this very much to say, if it's not my system, I'm going to leave. I'm going to stand up and leave. It's basically somehow heading also into one of the both final key takeaways I want to share. And the first one is that especially in a leadership employee situation, we are often seeing that employees try to find wrong answers to the wrong questions instead of daring asking the right questions, just standing up and asking the right questions. So that would be always my advice. Stop searching for answers to the wrong questions. And the second part, and this is something we have been now talking for the last minutes about this, where are we women very good at? And I think it's about showing emotions in the right situation. And my personal experience here is that when you try, I love to be in an harmonic environment, even though I like very much also to have controversial discussions. And but if I'm not shying away from conflict situations just to reach again the higher goal of harmony, right? So that's something which I'm really very much living in a corporate, in a professional environment. And in order to solve and manage conflicts, you definitely need to sort out the emotions first, and then the solution room or the options room is open for resolving the conflict to reach the higher goal of harmony again.
I love that, because I've heard that from Maria Jose a few times, and I think it's fantastic because we do tend to avoid conflict, and the growth is so crucial. I would add to that, if it hasn't been done before already, especially within your organization, then you have to be the advocate. And if you don't know how, remember that you have all these women around you who are willing to help. So make sure you reach out, get those mentors, and if it doesn't exist, you do it, you change it. Just remember to hold the door open for the women coming behind you. The audio will be shared on Spotify. This video will be shared on YouTube. Information on the speakers will be there as well. Thank you so much for joining and for not being sick. Really grateful. And I'll see you online next week. Thanks so much to you both.